I'm getting is like, if someone were to ask this queen or this king, hey, why don't you fix your own damn crown? The king might respond with something like, the queen has to, because I'm letting her live in my he'll probably call it my castle. So the king might say, she helps keep my crown on, and I let her keep being the queen. It's like she has to earn her way into these privileges. Why does the king's crown keep falling off and the queen's stays on? She keeps her own crown on and is helping keep the king's crown on too. How is she so easily able to do that? This queen's crown is deeply rooted, and that's why it stays on. This king's crown is not deeply rooted. It's like there's nothing for it to anchor into. Hello, welcome to Moonlit Justice Oracle. I'm here to do another collective automatic writing reading. And this one is inspired by the Call Me Lilith reading we did for Divine Feminine. And the scene I saw, the glimpse, was there was this king sat at a desk in a dark, empty room, and this king was working on something in front of him, like, I don't know, doing something with paperwork or something. And the queen walked in, and they were both wearing crowns. The queen walked in. In that video, did I specify that it was the queen? I might have. I don't know. The queen walked in, and she was just watching this king work. The king had his back to her. His back was facing the doorway. It's like the doorway the queen entered opened. She comes in, and her view is his back as he's working at his desk. And she was just watching him, and she saw that his crown kept falling off, or kept like sliding off his head, or starting to slide off his head. And she'd rush over and pick it, like fix it and set it back on his head, right? And she'd walk back, watch him again, and this was like a repeating cycle. And that was the glimpse I got. But it's been stuck in my mind, and I keep thinking about it, and I'm like, this morning I allowed myself to kind of just like wander off into that realm for a little bit. And it's an interesting place, y'all. And that's where this message comes from. Today is August 23rd, 2026. Do I have a title for this? Well, let's just call it, because when I was envisioning the interior of the castle, or the castle in general, the place that they lived, it was a very cold place and quiet, a cold and quiet place. So let's call this the cold and quiet, let's see what happens. The cold and quiet kingdom. Interesting. The cold and quiet kingdom. And the kingdom is what, I mean, if we're talking like a traditional king and queen situation, the queen is the official leader, right? The queen would be support. The queen would be support. Queen equals support. King equals rule. So under this king's rule, we've got the cold and quiet kingdom. Interesting. Okay, so inside the castle, right, I noticed that it was very quiet, and there were like, what would it be considered? The King's Guard. That's right, the King's Guard. This is interesting. The King's Guard, because it's in quotations, of course. Apparently quotations are a thing for these messages for me. The King's Guard. And this is an interesting concept here. We're going to get to that towards the end. The King's Guard. So anyways, so I know traditionally, or, I mean, though I don't know much about this kind of stuff, but from what I do know, the King's Guard, the Queen's Guard, they are silent in public. If we're talking like England, right? They're silent in public. And What's interesting to me is that when I envision the inside of this castle and the guards people protecting their castle and them, right? I noticed that they were also silent too. And I kind of, I don't know, in my mind, I was navigating this castle from the eyes of the queen as I walked around through it and explored, right? And I noticed that there was no talking amongst anyone. And it was like, what was I getting from it? It's like, I don't think that's usual. I don't think that is, I don't know. Who knows? It's like every household is different. Every household is different. In this household, it was like the rule is to be silent. The rule. And I think that rule comes from the king because of what else I experienced as I navigated this castle as the queen, right? I think there's like a silence rule, like no speaking. No speaking, silence. Silence. But what was happening was I noticed, because, okay, when the king was walking through the castle, there was no one like making eye contact with him. He wasn't making eye contact with anyone, and no one was making eye contact with him. No eye contact, no speaking, no eye contact. And so what I experienced as the queen navigating this was that there was a lot of eye contact, a whole lot of eye contact. And it was as if, you know, when people communicate through eye contact? Communication through eye contact. There was a lot of nonverbal, unspoken communication and understanding between the queen and the guards people. Communication through eye contact. Communication through eye contact, like an understanding. When the queen made eye contact with one of the guards people, there was like a whole conversation happening without saying a word. And that was really interesting to me. That was notable. And so what I was getting from that is that the queen has more of a, I guess, connection, relationship with the guards people, the people who are protecting the castle, the kingdom, them, protecting the king and queen, right? The queen had more of a, I'm going to say a bond with the guards people. And so what's interesting to me, and we'll get more into this, is that I think traditionally, let's say something happened inside this castle, there was a threat in some way. The priority would be to ensure the king's safety. The priority would be to protect the king. And I was picking up on some interesting stuff about this regarding the relationship between the guards people and the queen in some way. And it's like there's no speaking, there's no communication, but there's a silent understanding of something. And we're going to figure that out through this. The king's guard in quotations. It's like the rule is that they protect the king. And there's history to this regarding this specific queen and king, right? Also, I forgot to mention, this whole time I've been feeling like, you know that TV show? There's a TV show called Once Upon a Time, and it's about like people in like the normal world, right? Everyday world, who they're living out like real world lives, but it's based on their fairy tale characters. So there's a lot of like overlap between the fairy tale world and the real world. And I was kind of getting that with this. Like, yes, we're talking about a non-existent queen and king, essentially. This is a fairy tale world we're talking about. But I feel like this is relevant in the real world in some way. And I'm not talking any, like, current queens and kings. I'm not saying we're talking about a royal family or anything like that, because that's not the intent here. This is a queen aspect of someone and a king aspect of someone else. This is gonna make sense in some way to like everyday real world people. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying members of royalty aren't everyday real world people. It's just that's not who this message is for. That's not who it's intended for, at least. Okay. But it's like that fairy tale, real world overlap. So it's like this fantasy realm queen and king that just lives in my mind now. They represent like a real life relationship or connection or situation in some way. And I'm going to have to leave that up to you to figure out. Okay. Where are we at? Queen equals support, king equals rule. So let's talk a little bit more about the king and queen. So the king, if we're just going based off of the glimpse I got in the Call Me Lilith reading, the king, their crown kept falling off. Why was their crown falling off? Crown falling off. What does that represent? Crown falling off. And the queen kept rushing to save that crown from falling off of his head. It was like she, because if she didn't do that, the crown would fall off. And why was he not catching it? Why was he not trying to keep it on his head? You know what I mean? Crown falling off, not trying to catch it. Trying to save it. Interesting. Okay. Queen support. The queen in a supporting role was helping support the crown. Helping to, you see this? Helping to, I'm facing north again, by the way. I don't know, north, up, okay. Helping to keep the crown atop the king's head. Okay. So first question I have, why was the crown falling off the king? Why was the crown sliding off the king's head? A crown, okay, because in the Lilith reading, it was gone. It was the crown, little crown, simple, basic crown drawing here. And in that reading, I ended up putting gone. All caps, gone. And it was given, and then it's pointing down to the big period. It was given and it can be taken. Interesting. Can be taken. Oh, I wasn't done talking about the castle. I'm a little bit all over the place because it's like there's a lot of stuff going on in my head about this right now. So, okay, when I was walking around the castle, right, I noticed that it was like kind of barren. So it was a cold, quiet place, and it wasn't really like furnished. It had necessities, right, but it wasn't furnished. And it was very like a shell of a castle on the inside, right? And as I went outside to check it out, it was very like elaborate. It was very like fancy looking. And I'm like, that's interesting. Why is it so fancy looking on the outside and so like barren on the inside? It was like a facade, right? Let's put like the appearance of the castle was made to appear to be like fancy or like impressive in some way, but on the inside it was this cold, quiet, empty place essentially. Outside, Let's see, outside. Hold on, let me link some stuff here so I don't get too lost. King rule, no icon, there we go. Just some basic notes. Okay, north, what is north? Okay. It was given in, okay, so in the outside, it was like a, it was made to appear to be impressive, let's just say. Because that's the vibe I got. Like when you look at it, you're like, wow, that's an impressive looking castle. Outside of the castle. Castle. Inside. Outside. Castle. Inside. Cold. There was an emphasis on cold. But there's an interesting side note to that. Cold, quiet. I guess barren. Yeah, cold, like barren. What is barren? To me, barren is like void of life in some way. Like empty. Outside. Very elaborate, fancy, impressive. To me, all this equals facade. So, okay, this place they dwell. This is the little castle. Little castle. The place they dwell. From the outside, it appears to be a very impressive, abundant place, right? But on the inside of this castle, it's the opposite of that. It's cold, quiet, barren, and empty. A facade. But what was interesting, because, okay, my first thought is like, oh, it's meant to look like that from the outside perspective, so others who, let's say, live in this kingdom, right? Because it's not just the castle, it's in the kingdom as well. The kingdom. The kingdom that they rule over. Kingdom. Kingdom. So here's what I discovered about the kingdom. Because me as the queen went on a walk. I went with some of the guards people. And we had a great time. So there's something significant about that. There's something significant about the relationship between the queen and members of the king's guard. And it's so interesting. It's very interesting. And I'm curious as to what's going to come out about this. Kingdom. So the kingdom, we went walking about, right? And it was like, have you ever entered a room before anyone knew you were there, right? You entered a room and you just saw how it existed before you arrived, right? So how my experience in this realm, when I walked outside and was amongst the people of the land, it was all very quiet, melancholy. Quiet, melancholy. People were focused on like work, like what I walked into first, and pretty much it was mostly like a market area. It seemed like a market area. There were a lot of stalls with like vendors selling fruits and produce, things like that. And everyone was just quietly and kind of in a melancholy way going about their business. There wasn't much talk. It was a very quiet place. It was like whispers almost, but not whispers like someone's around and we need to quiet ourselves. It was more of a, this is the natural vibe, the natural amount of energy people are putting into that. Quiet, melancholy, whispers. Whispers. Just going about their business. There wasn't any like vibrancy. No vibrancy. Lack of vibrancy. But it was functional. It was a functional environment. Functional. Functionally. Okay. Functionally. Ally? Ally? I said ally and then it's actually spelled like ally. Ally. And we're going to link that to the King's Guard. Okay. Functional. What else about this kingdom? It seemed almost like not impoverished. This wasn't a place where people were wealthy. This wasn't a place where there was an abundance of riches. You know what I mean? It's almost as if all of the like riches in this land were put into the outside of this castle. Interesting. Not, because it's not impoverished. It's more of like just enough to not be in poverty, but not enough to be like fruitful, or not fruitful, maybe that's not the word. Not to like no one in this kingdom has extra money laying around. Like they don't have savings. They don't have, if they do have savings, it's very small and it's in case they need an extra gallon of milk that week. You know what I mean? It's there's nothing like not set up for long-term abundance. Let's just phrase it that way. Like this, they weren't poverty. They weren't impoverished. They weren't like, at least the part of this kingdom that I saw, right? Because when I saw this scene in the market, I felt like this was an accurate representation of the entire kingdom. Not set up for long-term abundance, right? And it's like all of any like extra money in some way was spent to the facade of this castle. Like there was more money and effort invested in the castle's facade. There was nothing invested on the inside. Not just money-wise or like for furnishings and things like that, but it's like the warmth or the like vital or what am I getting? I'm not getting the words. I'll get them later. This facade is very important. There's something about facade. And that kind of links, it's tied to this king's rule. The king in general. So the king, let's talk about the king. So from what I got, the glimpse that I got, I was kind of under the impression that this king was cold, distant, dismissive. Because when the queen would run to catch his crown, he didn't acknowledge her in any way and be like, oh, thanks for catching that. I was so focused on my work that I didn't notice it was falling off. There was nothing like that. And every time she did it, it was as if that's what was expected of her. She was expected to keep his crown on. And that's really interesting. Like, I feel like there's a lot of meaning to this. Expected to keep his crown on. It was like part of her, it's like job. Because, okay, what I was getting, right? What I was getting is, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. This just isn't my style. But when you go to a restaurant, right? And you have the staff that works there. And you sit down, you have a server that comes to you, takes your order, brings you your food. Okay, so this is what I've never understood, and it's just not my style. Like when someone brings, let's say a server brings someone the food they ordered, right? And they set it down in front of them or whatever. And the person being served doesn't acknowledge their presence at all. Like they don't They don't say, hey, thank you, or anything like that. There's no acknowledgement because it's expected. They're expecting that that food is brought to them by that server, right? And again, I'm not saying there's any, like that's wrong or anything. It's just not my style. If someone brings me something, I'm like, thank you. I don't care if I'm paying for it. I don't care, that's a person who is bringing me food. Thank you, I'll make eye contact, acknowledge that there's a human in front of me, thank them for my food, and enjoy it, And I've never understood how people like have a person next to them. It's like, what do they call it? Non-person treatment? Non-person treatment? Non-person. I mean, this is something I learned, I don't know, however long ago was the last time I went to college. Non-person treatment. So when you ignore people, when you treat people in a way that is not recognizing that they're a human, it's like, I don't know, there's more to it, but for some reason, non-person treatment. And it's always been an important part of me. I'm thinking, it's just reminding me of warmth, because there's cold and warmth, and I want to write it before I forget. There's a warmth to this queen and a coldness to this king, and that's important. Anyways, so I've never understood. Anyways, that's how this king was acting when the queen fixed his crown. Like it's what's expected of her, or he's paying her in some way. And I'm kind of trying to see it from this king's perspective, right? Because as we said with the last message I recorded, it's one side of a story, right? I've only gotten this queen side of the story from what I've witnessed in my imagination, right? So I don't know this king's story. This is just an observation. But I'm like, what would happen if that queen asked, or not even asked, why does this king not acknowledge the queen when she helps catch his crown? Okay, let's say he expects it from her. Expects it. He expects it. Maybe, I don't know why. Cold distance. The king, cold. I keep distant. Distant, I meant to write distant and I wrote distance. And then over here, I meant to write functional and I wrote functionally. What it is and how it is? What it is and how it is? What it is and how it is? Because I'm like, how would you explain what distance is to distant? And how would you explain what functionally is to functional? Let me take a moment with that one. Distance is what it is. What it is and how it is. Distance is what it is. And distance is how it shows up. Oh shit, hold on, I messed it up. Distant is what it is. No, distance, this is like, oh gosh. Distance is what it is. There's a distance between them. Distant is how it appears. Distant is how it appears. So this is the distance. And then distant is how that distance appears or feels. Distant is how it Appears. Interesting. Well, there's something to that. I don't know what it is. Let's write it down here. Where's it end? Distance is here. Distance. And then distant. This is interesting. Alright, great. Something else to follow me around in my mind now. Okay. Wait, I need this. See, watch. This is what it does. It makes it slightly more, I don't know, the perspective. To me, it's more natural. Anyways. Just me being clever. It's fine. Alright. Functionally. Something's working functionally. It appears and feels like it's working functionally because it is functional. Interesting. I don't know what that is. Okay. Cold, distant. Dismissive, no eye contact. Okay. So the king expects the queen to keep the crown on his head. Was this a deal they made? Because what I'm getting is, like, if someone were to ask this queen or this king, hey, why don't you fix your own damn crown? The king might respond with something like, the queen has to, because I'm letting her live in my he'll probably call it my castle, right? So in exchange for her service, support versus service. Interesting. Support versus service. Interesting. Support versus service. Okay. Interesting. Support versus service, huh? Okay. So the king might say, she helps keep my crown on, and I let her keep being the queen, or I let her keep living in the castle. It's like she has to earn her way into these privileges. Privileges, let's put that there. Privileges. Okay, and I'm just gonna take a moment to, this is kind of overall what I was getting with this king. This is their focus. This is themselves. We're doing the circle again. The targeted message we just did. Okay. Themselves. This is what they're focused on. And this is why they do what they do. So what I was kind of getting is that this is a king who, it's like their kingdom isn't a priority. I think that it's almost as if this king is a king just for the, like, status, or just for the, just so in history books it'll be written that he was king for this certain amount of time. You know what I mean? And it's like with the kingdom that he rules, it's like the bare minimum. The bare minimum has been given. It's not set up for long-term success. It's almost like this king doesn't care about the livelihood of those who live in the kingdom. The king doesn't care about the long-term success of this kingdom, perhaps what comes after their rule is over. This king seems to only be interested in themselves. It's like what they do is out of self-interest and for what they can get out of having the crown. And I think that's part of the message with it was given and it can be taken. How did this king get a crown? That's my question. Because this is someone who, it's not like, okay, here we go. Shit. Okay, I'm being drawn back to these circles. These circles we got. Okay, here we go. We're going back to the circles. Oh, shit. Okay. Okay, it's making sense. It's like all coming together now. To the end with the King's Guard. Okay. So kind of what I'm getting with these circles, I don't know how well you can see them, but okay. Here we go. Let's do one here. And this one was being called energy number 2 in the original message that this circle came out for. And this was being called energy 1. For today's message, we're going to call these the King and the Queen. King and the Queen. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to start off by saying what I was getting before. I kept getting the sense that this king got their crown because of, I don't, okay. It's like a shortcut, because this is the quicker route. And this route takes longer, but it's more immersive. There's more depth to it. And I'm saying that because I kind of was getting, because I'm like, what's the difference between these two crowns? Why does the king's crown keep falling off and the queen's stays on? She keeps her own crown on and is helping keep the king's crown on too. How is she so easily able to do that? And I'm saying easily. Interesting. There's something to this, what it is and how it is. How it seems or appears. What it is and how it appears. I'm changing it. What it is and how it appears. Okay. So what I was getting is that this queen, her crown is from a thorough, she got her crown from a thorough, what was I saying? A thorough, because I see these circles. To me, these circles represent, this is more complete. This is more complete, more deep-rooted in some way. Deep-rooted. And this one seems more like incomplete. And like more of a superficial process, or like a shallower process in some way. Like it's lacking the depth. There's a depth here. There's a shallowness here. Depth, shallow. And then incomplete, deep-rooted. It could be like superficial. Like it's nothing that is deeply rooted, right? This queen's crown is deeply rooted, and that's why it stays on. This king's crown is not deeply rooted. It's like there's nothing for it to anchor into. It's like not part of them. But this queen's crown is part of them. Does that make sense? Incomplete, it was like the fast route, or certain steps we're taking. I keep messing that up, and it's bringing me what it is and how it appears. Taken. I'm using the wrong forms of words, and that's not necessarily like me. Okay. Certain steps taken to acquire a crown. It's like reading a book called How to Acquire a Crown for Yourself. Reading a book I could be writing all this in on the paper, but called called Acquiring a Crown 101. Acquiring a Crown 101. And this queen got her crown. What would this be? If this king got his crown by reading a book, taking the steps to get a crown, and it's not feeling like these are proper steps, or maybe they are even, but it's like this process isn't as deep rooted. Like with the queen, her crown is embedded in who she is. It's part of her body, basically. And this king's isn't. And I'm not sure why that is. Complete, deep-rooted depth. It's like her path to getting this crown was very, like, a lot of twists and turns. It's like, in a sense, she worked harder to get her crown. And that's why it's so deeply rooted in her. And I think I hesitated to say worked harder for some reason, because I feel like it's not something, like from this king's perspective, he wouldn't see it that way. He wouldn't understand what worked harder meant, because his idea of working harder is different. It's on a more superficial level in some way. Worked harder? There's like this king doesn't see things that way. And what is this? Her crown is part of who she is. Interesting, and that's why it was given and it can be taken. It's as if this queen's crown was not given. She earned it. But this king's crown was given, and it can be taken. Whatever this king did to get their crown involved like a partial route to acquiring a crown in some way, or by following like okay, this queen would say, I read this, insert the name of a classic novel. I read this front to back, and this is, I don't know, she says, I completely read the story and I understand it. This king is like, I read that book too, but this king read the Cliff Notes version of it. This king has limited knowledge of that book, but he can say, I read that book. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? And that's what I'm getting with the more thorough versus a shortcut way. There's something about that. Interesting. Where were we going with this? Privileges, that's right. The king might expect the queen to fix the crown for him because of privileges she gets from being part of this castle by being his queen. And so what am I getting? What kind of attitude is that? What kind of attitude is that? That's, I don't know. Because over here, their focus is on themselves. They're not focused, the queen's out here, and the kingdom's even further out there. Kingdom. The queen. It's like this king is focused on themselves, and they're unaware, voluntarily. They're voluntarily unaware of who their queen is, what she's doing, what she's been doing, what she can do. Something about the kingdom too. They're unaware. Voluntarily, it's like voluntarily unaware is ignoring, right? There might be something about that non-person treatment, ignoring. This is like someone ignoring because they're focused on themselves only. And like I was saying before, it's like this king is only interested in wearing this crown because of what it like represents in the world or in history. You know what I mean? It's like it has nothing to do with wanting to be a ruler. It's like the difference between a leader and a boss. Boss versus leader. This person, this king, is interested in being the boss and not the leader of this kingdom. And so why else would this? Maybe the king isn't even aware that the crown is falling off. Maybe there's an aspect of like being involuntarily unaware. Involuntarily unaware. Like they're just oblivious to what else is happening because they're so focused on themselves. Oblivious? Okay. So this king is either, I guess both maybe, either and or oblivious or ignoring. Unintentional obliviousness or intentional ignoring of the queen, the kingdom, because they're focused on themselves, their self-interest, why they want that crown, why they want to be king. And it has something to do with like the process they went through to get to be the king. It was given and it can be taken. And it's almost as if this king has a like almost a feeling, or like they feel or think that they're untouchable in some way. I think I was saying that during the I Am Lilith reading, or Call Me Lilith reading. This is definitely connected. Like, that energy we're getting in that reading is connected to this king. Maybe even this queen for the feminine energy in that reading. Okay. So whatever's going on here with the king, they're acting from a place of self-interest. They're perceiving their kingdom from a place of being, I want to say like selfish or focused on what they can get out of it versus actually caring about the kingdom. And kind of what I was getting was that it's almost as if they're not invested in anything else except for the present moment in their kingdom. Interesting. Because it's like with the future, right? Not set up for long-term abundance. This king's mindset, the way he's built this kingdom, the way he's ruling this kingdom, isn't coming from a place of setting this kingdom up for long-term success. It's like, what can he get out of it now? That's all that matters to him. Okay, let's move on from the king for a little bit. Let's get over to this queen. So she keeps fixing his damn crown, right? And in the Call Me Lilith reading, I was like, that feminine energy is being encouraged to let that crown fall, right? And I'm kind of getting like, what would happen? What would happen if this queen, because this queen is warm. There's some kind of warmth to her. Oh yeah, I didn't mention it. So I kept getting, like when the queen would open the door to where this king was sat, and I'm kind of getting like this was the king's space that she was entering, right? And I saw her breath, like when someone is in a cold room, their breath can be seen. Like there's something about this coldness with this king. There's a coldness, and where they go, it's cold in some way. It like this coldness emanates from them. This warmth emanates from this queen. And like when she entered his space, it was very cold because he was in there, right? But when she went out of that room, it was much warmer. Like it felt much warmer and brighter. Like this was a very dark, cold area. The only light in there was lighting what this king was focused on their desk in front of them, right? And it's like, what was that light? It was either a candle or a lantern. Interesting. This king, what is it with the king and warmth? There's something about this king and warmth. Their use of warmth. They use warmth or light. They uses warmth or light or light to, because there's self-interest here, right? So the only good warmth and light, the only reason to have that or use it, because the room was completely dark and they were working on something. This was something that was like for their benefit in some way. Whatever they were doing was, they were focused on it and ignoring everything else because it was for their own benefit, right? They were using the light and their candle there's warmth, to shine a light on what they were doing so that they could benefit from it in some way. Uses warmth, light for the benefit of themselves. Benefit of themselves only. Interesting. So there's an aspect to this king that he's like a user in some way. User. I started wondering, I'm like, okay, so let's say if something happened to this king, who would be the heir to the throne, right? And so I'm like looking around, and I'm like, I don't think these two have produced an heir to the throne, right? Like, who would the heir be? And I'm like, okay, why haven't they produced an heir? Like, I know it's typically expected in some way for kings and queens to produce heirs to the throne. And I'm like, why did they not produce an heir? And it's almost going back to what I was saying before, not set up for long-term abundance. This king isn't interested in long-term abundance in this kingdom. This king does not care what happens once he's gotten what he wants from it and is gone. You know what I mean? And it's like, there's something about that. And I was getting something about ancestors too, but I don't remember what it was. Ancestors. Ah, yes. Yes. There's an aspect to this involving, like, let me link these two together. Because when we're talking about what was I getting from this? Ancestors, the people that came before him, the people that are responsible for his very existence. And I'm like, there's no, because right, when you think about our individual existences on this world, right, we've got a shit ton of ancestors that came before us who struggled, who fought, who went through a lot of tough shit for us to be here today. And it's like, to me, there's an importance in what we do, how we treat the world and others because of that, out of respect for those who came before us, right? There's an importance. They're important to me because of that, you know. Everything they fought for, everything they struggled through and survived, going down for generations and generations, right? That's led to us being here. If it wasn't for them, we would not be here, right? And it's like, was this kingdom? It's like this kingdom was handed to them in some way. This kingdom was just handed to them. And there had to have been those that came before him. Whether that's just kings before him, queens before him, whatever monarchs came before him. Because I'm like, I don't think he created this. Maybe he did create the kingdom. Or maybe he just showed up and became the king of it somehow. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, there's a disregard. Disregarding. And this could very much translate into like real life. You know what I mean? Like how someone in this king energy is acting in real life, or the way they operate in real life is completely disregarding all of those that came before them. Like not understanding why, that's it. Why hold on. Like the meaning of life, right? There's something deep to this that I'm not quite getting right now. Why they worked so hard, and I worked in quotations, why they worked so hard. There's something about that. How this king views, working harder. Why they worked so hard to help them be part of this world. It's almost like this king, and if we're talking like how this king is showing up in this regular everyday world, right? What they're choosing to like priorities. Yeah, because they're prioritizing themselves, their self-interest. And it's like this person, these people, whatever collective might resonate with this king energy, their ancestors are quite literally saying, this isn't why we worked so hard to help you be part of this world. What the fuck are you doing? I'm kind of getting that. It's like there's something serious here about whatever this king is doing in this actual like real world existence. Whatever they're doing that's so self-centered, disregarding those around them, the kingdom we live in, there's something about that. And I'm getting like heavy ancestor energy, like something specific about their particular ancestors, something they went through, or what they had to survive just to continue on, just to find the like strength and ability to bring new family into this world, continuing on that legacy, priorities, legacy. It's like part of me wants to be really rude, and it's not like I don't want to be rude, but I'm getting this ancestor energy is like upset or like offended in a way. They're like offended about what this person is doing, how they're showing up in this world, what they're choosing to prioritize, the legacy they're leaving. There's something about that. Anyways, hair. hair, interesting. Hair. Something about hair and these ancestors. I don't know what this is. Hair and ancestors? Hair? I don't know. Okay. Where were we going with all of this? Ah, yes. Only focused on the present, not focusing on the future, not being appreciative of the past with like ancestors or this kingdom in general. Like, I don't know. Only focused on themselves and what they can get out of something now, or what they can get out of a situation, or what they can get from being the king of this kingdom. Okay, here, let's move on from this king. This queen is an interesting one, because what's been happening is that this queen has a warmth, right? And kind of what I was getting was that it's like, okay, I got the image of kind of similar to like when people are like, when a bride and groom are walking down an aisle, right? And they're walking down this aisle. I don't know if you can see this very well. Here's the aisle. They're walking down this aisle, and there's all these people on each side of them, right? Let's do a Q. A Q for the queen, and a K for the king. And, hold on. The aisle. This is important. I'm just going to do a jumbled mess for the people. I was going to make it nice, but we ain't got time for that. Alright, here's the queen, and here's the king. So here's the queen and queen, right? And they're walking down this, they're walking through this crowd of people, essentially, right? And the king, important note before I say another word. The first thing I saw, they were about, because I saw the process of them, like, leaving their castle to go on this, I guess, walk, let's call it. And what happened was the king turned to a mirror and was, like, meticulously fixing their crown. Like, they were hyper-focused on their crown being perfectly straight. And I thought that was so interesting. I'm like, okay, so there's something, and that's why I was getting with the facade of the castle, so much being put into the appearance of this castle, like how things appear. There's some kind of, and that's reminding me of, there's some kind of level of superficiality here. Focused on the appearance of things, or how things seem from the outside. Anyways, so the king was looking in the mirror, and like the amount of effort they were putting into how their crown looked was insane. Like, I was blown away when I was watching this happen in my mind, right? I wasn't watching it happen, but this is how it played out in my mind. And I'm like, oh shit. And I kind of saw this queen. This queen's funny because I kind of saw the queen in the background watching this, and I don't know how to describe her facial expression. It was like, it wasn't an obvious, it was a very subtle, like, look of a sad combination of hopelessness and disgust. But a lot of love, too. It's like, there's a reason this queen has stung, yeah. There's a reason this queen has stuck around for so long. And I'm getting, this isn't like, this queen has been sticking by this king's side. And I think there's history behind that. I don't know if we're going to be able to get into it this time, but I have theories. Anyway, so she was watching this king do this in the mirror, right? And it's like, I can imagine what was going on through her mind when she saw how much he cared about that crown as he was about to go outside. And like, because I could see how like that hopeless feeling of like, it's almost like, because okay, this queen is supporting this king as he rules the kingdom. This is the king who makes the rules. This is the king who basically holds the fate of their entire kingdom. The decisions he makes, his actions, his ideas, what he chooses to prioritize, determines the fate of this kingdom. Her role is to support and to be there for him in various ways, right? And it's like a feeling, I'm getting like a feeling of like doom. Like she understands that this kingdom is like doomed to fail in some way, or there's something about, she has an understanding of what's going on. She has more awareness. She has an awareness that this king does not. And I think it comes from what I'm about to talk about, her warmth, and how she affects the people in this kingdom. Because this king is very, it's like a boss versus a leader, right? The people, so I envisioned, I was standing behind them. I was standing behind this king and queen, like looking at their backs as they were walking through this crowd. And the people in the kingdom, when the king was approaching or around or visible in some way, they were very like making themselves appear small, no eye contact, very quiet, very almost like a scared feeling, like they're scared of this king in some way. Scary? There's a coldness, and oftentimes to me, when there's a coldness about people, there's a sense of cruelty in some way. There's a sense of harshness. Scary, cruel, I don't know. I didn't say anything. It's more of a feeling. Like, I feel like there's a part of this king that can be scary and cruel in some way. And so whenever he would pass by these people living in the kingdom, they acted in a way that like showed obedience, submission, and a little bit of fear or intimidation in some way. And then I glanced over to see what was going on with this queen, and like it's like when she walked by, there was this warmth emanating, and like people were affected by it. It's like the opposite of what this king was, the opposite effect of what this king was having on the people. This queen was having a positive effect. Vivian? She was having a positive effect on people. And it's like she's loved. She's loved by the people in this kingdom. And to me, I didn't get to go into it when I was talking about when she went out with the guards people. She went out with the guards people, and that was also very evident. Like, she was interacting with people, and there were smiles. Like, she has a positive impact on those in the kingdom. And this king has the opposite effect. This king has a negative impact. And that's going to lead us back to the King's Guard. The King's Guard. Because it's like, there's something here about the perspective of how the kingdom sees the king and queen. How the guards people see the king and queen. There's something about this. And what I was getting, okay, let's move on to the King's Guard. Also, okay, my question when I saw this, I looked at the king, saw just the shit show that happened when he walked by, and then I saw the queen and how lovely it was. Like, it was a truly lovely experience. And you can see, like, genuine warmth between everyone involved. And there's such a distinct, like, difference here. And it's like, where was I going with this? I wondered as I was back here watching this, I'm like, does the king see this? Because the queen definitely understands how, oh, we're doing the arrows again. The queen definitely understands how this king is perceived, how people feel about this king, how people like feel about his rule. But is the king aware of what the people feel about the queen, or how the queen is perceived? Or is he so self-involved that he doesn't even notice? You know, I'm torn. And I'm like, if he did, because it's like if this king looked at this queen and the effect she has on those around her, the effect she has, what she brings to the kingdom they share, this king does not value it. He doesn't value what this queen brings to the kingdom they share. And if he does value it, he doesn't show it, he doesn't like express it, he doesn't treat her in a way that shows that he values it. Right? So I'm like, is he even paying attention? Or is it, again, he's so focused on himself that he doesn't even notice that. And this is where things get interesting. This is the part that I guess we should title The Downfall of the King. The downfall. Oh, interesting. Down. Because I drew up earlier. North. Because I'm facing north again. The downfall of the king. Because I was like down, up, down. It's like there's something about this. Either this king is choosing to ignore or is oblivious to what's actually happening within their kingdom. I don't know if they're oblivious to how this queen is respected by the king's guard. And there's something about that. There's something major about this King's Guard. And I'm like, because, okay, real life example, right? The King's Guard is people who protect this king. Their priority, I don't know if I said this before. Yeah, I did. Their priority is to protect the king. If something happens in their castle and they have to make a choice of who to save, they're supposed to protect the king. That's their priority. Help the queen if they can, but their number one priority was to help the king. And I think that's what they signed on for in some way. They signed up knowing that they would, if necessary, have to sacrifice the queen in some way for the king's benefit. But something's happened. And this could, in real life, this could show up as like this king's friends or allies with ally. It's like, there's something about that, and I don't know if they're oblivious to it or if they're choosing to ignore it or how this is related. But it's like, so in this, with this, right? Because they're going to be surrounded by guards people. They're surrounded by guards people in various ways. But what I was getting, because at first I saw the guards people in front of them in a uniformed, expected way. This is like, I don't know, like how they would be expected to protect the king primarily, but also the queen, right? It's very even. It's very, what's the word? It's even, it's structured. It's there's equal amounts surrounding both of them, right? But what I found was interesting, I turned around because I was like right behind them. Like I could see their shoulders and their head and those around them. But once I turned around, I saw the guards people were all gathered behind this queen. And that's when shit got real for me. Because this king wasn't looking backwards. They were focused on front and center probably, like they weren't interested in what was going on around them. They were just showing up as the king, showing their crown or whatever. And I turned around and I saw all the guards people behind this queen. And I was like, oh shit, I get what's happening here. And it's like none of them have this king's back. Any kind of dangers from over here would have gotten this king. These guards people don't have this king's back, but that king might not know it. And they're surrounding this queen's back. It's like they're, what would be the word? It's like they took an oath to protect this king at all costs, right? Prioritize the king's safety. And it's like they're no longer, yes, on paper they are the king's guard, but in actuality, they're the queen's guard. And why is that, you might ask? Because they see it too. They see this king for who they are. They see this king for what they're doing to their kingdom. They see this king as not caring about them, not caring about their families, their futures, the kingdom they live in. They see that this king is only interested in themselves. And that's why they have the queen's back, because they see the opposite. They see the opposite in this queen. And it's like, I think traditionally, okay, we'll get to that. Let me get to the last scene I got. The last scene I got was the queen not catching the crown. And I was honestly, I was a bit nervous. And I understand a little bit, because it's like, this queen has always caught that crown for the king. And I'm like, oh no, how is this gonna go? And it's not good. The queen's fine. The queen makes it out. So what happens is this queen opens the door. She knows what she's about to walk into. Of course, the king, back turned, working on whatever they're working on, right? She notices the crown is starting to tilt a little bit, and she just watches it. And I was getting a very, deep breaths, like she was calming herself. Because this queen loves that king. Or she loved that king. She gave all she could to that king. But I mean, we've spoken about what she got in return. She's noticed how this kingdom is being affected, what the future of this kingdom looks like, the self-interest of this king. And she knows she cares more about this kingdom than the king does. And the king's guard, the queen's guard, they have her back, right? And so what I saw was this very like slow motion walking upstairs, because this king's room that he's working in is upstairs, right? I don't know the relevance of that. She's walking up these two stairs. It's like the staircase, it's like one of those staircases that it's like you walk up this way and then there's like a flat area and you turn and then you walk up. Anyway, so I saw the slow, and there was a guards person over here. There was a guards person standing at the top of the stairs. And as the queen was walking up this staircase, she maintained eye contact with this guard. And the sense that it was such an intense eye contact. It's like they both knew what was about to happen, right? They both knew what was about to happen, but not a word was said. She continues up the staircase. This is a very dramatic, slow scene in my mind. She opens up the door. And what was interesting is like, I forgot to mention, but whenever I'd imagine her opening the door, she would first stop in front of the door. It's a closed door. She would stop and like take a moment to breathe. And there's something about that. It takes a lot for her to interact with this king. It takes a lot for her to continue to catch his crown. And it's like, this queen has been very patient with this king, is what I'm getting. And it's like she's done this because of care for him, care for their kingdom. And I guess maybe she was hoping that things would change. But things haven't changed. I think they've only gotten worse in some way. And so that's why she decided to do what she's about to do. And as she stood there about to enter the door, or about to open the door, she took several deep breaths, right? And I'm getting like there's a lot of the guards people, they have their eyes on her. It's like exactly what was happening here. While they were in this crowd of people, they were protecting her from danger, and they did not have his back, right? The same thing was happening inside this castle. Guards were all around. Not like visible, like once you open the door, you wouldn't see the guards there, but they were very aware it was about to happen. And as she like entered, or she didn't enter, as she opened the door and looked at the king, she saw his crown sliding off, and she let it fall. And when I tell you the speed that this king turned around and stared at her, it was like, you think maybe he didn't notice or something, but the moment he felt it leave his head, he turned around and glared at her and freaked out. And it's like the look he gave her was of like ultimate betrayal. Like he had no idea why she didn't catch his crown. She had no idea. And he came at her. I feel like he was about to be violent or something like that. He had bad intentions. He had bad intentions towards her because she betrayed him, right? And this is taking me back to the Call Me Lilith readings, where it's like someone's perspective of what betrayal is fucked. Anyways, so what happened was she ran off, and then before he could make it out of that room, out of that doorway, all the king's guardsmen, all the queen's guardsmen were lined up, creating like a blockade of sorts. He had nowhere to go. He could not leave. And that was the end. That was the end. And from then on out, it was the queen's guard. I don't know what happened to that king, at least yet. I think it's like a to be continued. It's like that queen got away. She has the support. The kingdom already loves her. And I know traditionally, I had to look it up because I'm like, what happens if a king is deemed unfit? It's like, okay, forgive me if I'm incorrect about this, but from what I gathered, it's if something happens to the king, the throne goes to the next qualifying heir, right? They didn't produce an heir together. I I don't know if there's any like any other qualifying heirs or whatever. But here, exceptions for a ruling queen. I highlighted this. A queen only rules if she is a queen regnant, meaning she inherited the throne in her own right rather than marrying into it. And that's what I was getting with like this. Her crown is part of who she is. She didn't take steps to achieve that crown or acquire that crown. It's not an adornment atop her head. It's a permanent fixture of who she is. And that's the difference here. And it's like, so what I felt was that the queen ends up ruling this kingdom in some way on her own without this king. And I don't know where the king goes. She inherited the throne in her own right rather than marrying into it. It's like, there's something here, and obviously this isn't like following real world rules. Forgot what I was getting, where I was even going with this. Yeah, I don't know what happens to the king. I do know, I'm fairly certain that in this storyline, the queen ends up ruling the kingdom. She's already loved. She's already loved by the people who live in the kingdom. She's cared about this kingdom, its success. It's like she has the vision. She has an awareness. She understands how to make this kingdom successful, thriving, how to make the people in it happy and set up for long-term abundance, right? And it's like this king was not qualified for this kingdom. And maybe they were. I feel like there was a history. I think there was a time, and I was getting a lot of like corruption. Like there's something that happened with this king. There was some kind of corruption. Because I'm like, how the hell did this queen end up with this king? Like, what happened here? Because I never got the idea that she was forced. I never got the idea that she was forced to be with him. She was choosing to stand by this king. And it's like, okay, why was she choosing it? Because I don't think I don't think she would have chosen this king in this current state he was in, right? I don't think she would have chosen to support a king who treated their kingdom like this. It's not the worst way to treat a kingdom, but it's not set up for long-term abundance. It's only ruling a kingdom for the crown that you get to wear and for whatever you get personally out of it. You know, she wouldn't have signed up for that. So maybe things were different for them. Maybe when they first, I don't know, came in contact or whatever, things were different. But he was corrupted. This king was corrupted in some way. I don't know if it was like driven, because he was driven by greed maybe? Driven by greed? Because there's something about this being self-centered or only interested in self in some way. There's something that happened with that, and that's where it all went wrong. The Queen's Guard. It's like he had no idea. He thought the King's Guard was there to protect him. And it's like, I don't know. I wonder what he thought when he realized the King's Guard was protecting the Queen from the King. You know, it's like they were sent to protect the King, but now they're protecting others from the King. Interesting. Anyways, that's the story of the Cold and Quiet Kingdom. Yeah, I have no idea if this resonated. I hope that it brought some clarity and was beneficial in some way. Until next time, bye.